Hello, everyone. I'm Marcelia Loza, and today I'll be talking about the environmental impact of beef production and how it affects all life on our planet. Let's discuss why I'm even talking about beef. First, beef is the most environmentally harmful meat we can consume. Producing just 1 kilogram of beef produces significantly more greenhouse gases than other proteins like chicken, pork, or even plant-based options. In fact, according to environmental researchers Galak and Marbach, beef production alone contributes 66% of greenhouse gas emissions in agriculture. And beyond the emissions, beef is a massive global industry worth hundreds of millions of dollars, which means its impact is enormous. And as you can see from this chart, beef production has a much larger carbon footprint than other foods. And that's why I'm focusing on beef today, being that it's a major player in climate change. So although beef production may seem a distant issue, it actually affects all of us. Beef production is one of the major contributors to climate change. It's linked to greenhouse gas emissions, deforestation, and water pollution. So, what exactly are greenhouse gases and why do cows matter? Well, greenhouse gases are invisible gases that trap heat into the Earth's atmosphere, kind of like a big blanket that's causing the warming of our planet. And most people have heard of carbon dioxide, but beef production releases two other powerful gases, methane and nitrous oxide. Cows produce methane when they digest food because they're ruminants. Their stomachs go through a process called enteric fermentation, which leads to a lot of burping and gas, which are both full of methane. And then there's nitrous oxide, which is 300 times more potent than CO2, which comes from their manure and from fertilizers used to grow their feed. And that's why beef production is a big climate concern. And another significant issue is land use. When we think about beef, we usually think of hamburgers or steaks, but what if I told you that a single hamburger is connected to one of the biggest environmental crises on the planet? And according to a 2016 Union of Concerned Scientists study, beef production is #1 cause of deforestation worldwide. So between 1990 and 2005, cattle ranching caused about 71% of all deforestation in South America, a large portion of which occurred in the Amazon rainforest. See, forests aren't just beautiful landscapes and places you can go visit. They play a critical role in maintaining our planet's climate. They absorb carbon dioxide, help regulate temperature, and provide oxygen. But even more importantly, they home two-thirds of the world's species. So when forests are cleared for cattle, we lose trees, entire ecosystem, and even species. And research confirms that deforestation not only eliminates trees that could absorb CO2, they release massive amounts of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, worsening climate change. And research by Stoll Kleeman and O'Riordan in 2015 shows that deforestation is a major contributor to rising global temperatures, extreme weather, and disruptions in food production. So if beef production continues to drive deforestation, these issues will only worsen in our lifetime. So imagine waking up in 2050 and finding that 80% of the world's forests are gone. Researchers, including Fegan and his colleagues, predict that this could happen if beef production continues to expand. And deforestation isn't the only environmental cost of beef production. Let's think about another essential resource like water. Beef production doesn't just take up land, it also consumes enormous amounts of water and contributes to pollution. So, how much water does it really take to produce beef, and what are the environmental consequences? Well, raising cattle, growing feed, and processing beef all require massive amounts of water. It takes about 15,415 liters of water to produce just 1 kilogram of beef. That's like taking more than 100 showers to produce just 1 kilogram of beef. And that's a huge amount, especially when water scarcity is a growing concern. But even more concerning is how beef production impacts water quality. Runoff from large cattle farms and fertilizers pollute rivers and lakes, directly affecting the water we all rely on. So, now that we've examined the environmental damage caused by beef production, let's consider the ethical part of it, because this industry affects real people. And according to a 2016 report from the Union of Concerned Scientists, the expansion of cattle ranching in the Amazon has led to the displacement of indigenous communities. This land is often cleared illegally, and these communities lose just not only their homes, but also their access to their ancestral forests and cultural traditions. And the same report emphasizes a major issue with corporate transparency. While some companies claim they support sustainable practices, many don't really disclose where their beef is being sourced from. Without any enforcement or verification of these sustainability pledges and policies, often they mean very little. It's a case of greenwashing, saying the right thing but not doing it. And finally, there's environmental injustice. The waste and pollution from large scale cattle farming often impacts low income communities the worst. The burden of beef production pollution isn't shared equally, which is why these ethical concerns show that this issue isn't just about climate. It's about people who suffer when corporations aren't held accountable. So we've talked about the environmental problems caused by beef production, but there's also some good news. Efforts are being made to address these issues. One major example comes from Brazil. The, Am- the Amazon rainforest has been one of the hardest hitting areas due to cattle ranching. But thanks to public and private collaborations, deforestation rates have actually declined in some areas over the years. This is due to government corporations and environmental groups collaborating to set stricter land use policies. And some companies have committed to zero deforestation policies, and these pledges aim to avoid sourcing beef from areas where forests were cleared. And beyond that, some businesses are actively helping ranchers transition to more sustainable farming methods. But the catch is that these efforts only work if companies are held accountable. If there's no transparency, if consumers or investors and governments don't demand proof that these policies are being followed, then progress can stall or not even happen. So while it's encouraging that some companies are stepping up, it's just not enough in its own. One of the most impactful solutions is shifting toward more plant-based foods. Research shows that reducing beef consumption and incorporating more plant-based options could shrink agricultural's environmental footprint by up to 80%. And that is a massive difference. And I know what you might think. Does this mean we all have to go vegan overnight? No, not at all. Even small changes, like occasionally swapping a beef burger for a plant based one, could add up over time. And here's the best part, our generation is already leading this shift. Studies show that young people, especially college students, are more open to plant based eating than ever. And that's why we're seeing more meat alternatives in grocery stores, restaurants, and fast food chains. Our choices as consumers directly influence the market. So when companies see this great demand for all these sustainable options, they're more likely to provide them. And of course, the shift isn't as simple as just saying, let's all eat less beef. Some big challenges are standing in the way. First, money heavily influences the global food system, especially here in the US, where the animal agriculture industry is worth 125 billion. That kind of economic power means that these policies aren't going to make any progress overnight. And then there's an issue of awareness. Many people don't even realize how much their diet impacts the environment. So, this issue often gets overlooked. And finally, there's the cultural connection to meat. In many places around the world, eating meat isn't just about nutrition, it's identity and even celebration. So, change has to happen in a way that respects and understands those cultural factors. So, what we can do as students is we have more access to information. We can start conversations and we can make informed decisions that can create big changes for the future. And the more people that understand the connection between food and sustainability, the more pressure there is on companies to take action and policymakers. So, a few strategies being discussed to help reduce the environmental impact of beef production is subsidies for plant-based foods. These subsidies make plant-based alternatives more affordable and accessible, which has proven to encourage more people to choose sustainable options. And another strategy is carbon labeling. So, much like nutritional labels, these will also tell us which carbon footprint or how big a carbon footprint of the products we have. But however, carbon labeling hasn't significantly impacted consumer behavior. And finally, taxes on meat products are also being considered, but the public has been more resistant to this approach. But overall, each strategy aims to reduce the environmental harm caused by beef production. So let's think about the future for a moment. If future trends continue, global meat production is expected to double by 2050, and that means more deforestation, greenhouse gas emissions, and strain on our planet's resources. So, why does this matter to us? Well, climate change isn't just some distant issue, it's something we will experience in our lifetime. With rising temperatures, extreme food shortages, and extreme weather, these aren't just abstract ideas. These are things that are already happening and they're expected to get worse. So, what should we take from all this? First, beef production clearly has an impact on the environment, from greenhouse gases to deforestation and water pollution. But here's the hopeful part: change is possible even with stronger policies and better transparencies from companies. And small lifestyle shifts from everyday people like us can make a major difference. It will add up. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Even swapping out one beef meal a week for a plant based option can reduce emissions. And when a lot of us do that, it adds up. And finally, awareness is power. The more we talk about these issues, the more pressure there is on corporations and governments to act. We all have a role to play. The way we eat really does shape the planet and the future. Thank you for listening.